Which cars do you think Formula 1 drivers had as their first cars? After all, just because you get paid to race a Ferrari at the weekend doesn't mean you learnt to drive in one, does it? To find out, I've put together a list of the weirdest first cars owned by some of the best Formula 1 drivers of all time, and I've ranked them by unlikeliness. So the weirder the car is, the higher it goes in my list. Anyway, I'm Matt Watson, and you're watching CarWow.
Buying a new car? Then head to CarWow, and my team will help you find your next car at a fair price. CarWow, your one-stop car buying comparison site.
Formula 1 drivers seem to be getting younger every year. Or maybe I'm just getting older. Yeah. Take Max Verstappen, for example, the Flying Dutchman. He'd already done 14 Formula 1 races before he was old enough to drive legally on the roads. And when he eventually got his licence, he bought a Renault Clio, which is pretty sensible, really, for a first car. Except Max's motor was the 200 horsepower turbocharged RS version in liquid yellow, but of course. Austrian Formula 1 ace Niki Lauda once described Gilles Villeneuve as the craziest devil I have ever come across, yeah. Gilles was a seriously talented driver who started racing snowmobiles in his native Canada. But in the summer, this teenage petrolhead traded snow for go and raced a modded 1967 Ford Mustang at a local drag strip. It doesn't get much cooler than that now, does it? Sebastian Vettel is one of the most successful drivers ever. But unlike some Germans, he has a pretty wicked sense of humour.
Would you agree with that?
No. Sorry, Germans. He even likes British sitcoms. But why this Formula 1 star thought the original BMW X3 was a cool first car is totally beyond me. It's practical, but it's not cool. I mean, look at it. Maybe it was his idea of a joke. Next up is Lewis Hamilton. Sorry, Sir Lewis Hamilton. He's just been knighted. He's a 7-time world champion and the most successful Formula 1 driver ever. He's won more races than anyone else in history, so he's a bit of a British institution, like tea and crumpets, or the Queen. Anyhow, it makes sense that he learned to drive in another British icon, and can you guess what it was? Of course, it was a Mini Cooper. He bought one back in 2002, but only because his mum had one, and he liked it so much, he decided to get one himself. Fernando Alonso's first car was a Renault Megane, in what he calls yellowy brown. Sounds a bit like beige, if you ask me, Fernando. He bought this when he was still driving in Formula 3, but this wouldn't be his last Renault because he ended up joining the Renault Formula 1 team and he won 2 world championships with them in 2005 and 2006. Thankfully, those cars were less diarrhea coloured than his road car. Smiley Daniel Ricciardo started out on the public roads in a brand new Toyota Hilux. His dad bought it for him because he figured his petrol-head son wouldn't be able to do burnouts in a pickup truck. Instead, the young Ricciardo used to take his mates' dirt bikes into the outback. How is dirt biking in the outback safer than a bit of wheel spin? That's dad logic for you. Mark Webber is another Aussie who started out in a Toyota, although he had to make do with a Corona. Yeah, that was actually the name of a car before it was a global pandemic. This was just a humdrum family saloon, but Mark's car turned out to be just as indestructible as a Hilux. He says his mates once set it on fire and it still worked afterwards. Next on my list is Jenson Button, who actually paid £2,000 for a Mark III Vauxhall Cavalier when he passed his driving test in the late 90s. Button actually modified it with some upgraded ICE. That stands for in-car entertainment, not internal combustion engine in this particular instance. He also fitted some lowering springs and gave it some big alloy wheels, so it looked proper, mate. Look at that. My Cav. It's wicked, isn't it? It never took like that. Anyway, despite all of that, it was still a Mark III Vauxhall Cavalier, which is... Damon Hill almost became a Formula 1 world champion in 1994 until he was taken out by someone else on this list. We'll come to them later. But let's not dwell on that now, eh? Especially as Damon probably doesn't want to dwell on his first set of wheels either. He learned to drive in a £250 Volkswagen Beetle. Well, when it worked, anyway. Apparently the starter motor was a little bit iffy. Nigel Mansell was probably more famous for his facial hair than his actual driving. Everyone's favourite Brummy racing driver slung some geezer 80 quid for his first car in 1969. Well, it wasn't actually a car at all, it was a Mini that had been turned into a van. Nigel doesn't have much to say about it really, other than it was a good little car. World champion James Hunt had a bit of a reputation for being a ladies' man and for crashing, which is how he got the nickname Hunt the shunt. We don't know what his first car was exactly, but one of his favourites was an Austin A35 van, like the one from Wallace and Gromit. Apparently Hunt also used to overtake sports cars on Wandsworth Roundabout in his A35 van. However, Hunt wasn't the only driver who loved an old Austin. So Jackie Stewart had one too, but Stewart was the polar opposite of James Hunt. He preferred to cover himself in tartan, not tan supermodels, and Stewart bought his Austin A30 by saving all the cash he got from working in his dad's garage as a kid. How very sensible. Next up is Ayrton Senna. Now, I could go on about how he helped develop the amazing Honda NSX, or that he once beat a track full of world champions, or driving identical Mercedes 190Es. But all you need to know about the Brazilian legend is that he could drive his dad's Willys Jeep when he was only 7, and he could even change gears without using the clutch. He was 7 and driving a Willys Jeep without using the clutch. Now, if you want to see how a modern Jeep fares off-road against some of its key competitors, put a link to a great off-road video battle up there. Click on it, go watch that video. Senna's Formula 1 nemesis was Alan the Professor Prost. He started driving in his parents' Renault 4, which is hardly the most exciting car ever made, even though they are kind of cool nowadays. Anyway, at least it came from Prost's Gallic homeland. However, Alan soon bought himself an Opel Kadett GTE, which he said he loved. Je t'aime le GTE. Anyway, it's the only car he ever had an accident in. Well, on the road, he crashed quite a bit on track. Next on my list are two drivers who both started out in an Austin 7, and both when they were just 9 years old. One was Sir Stirling Moss, who sadly passed away last year, but he was still racing in his 80s, although not in Formula 1 cars, obviously. The other is Jim Clark, the Scottish legend who won 2 Formula 1 championships in the 60s. Both of these racers used to hoon their Austin 7s around local fields when they were kids. Only Clark soon graduated to a Sunbeam Talbot Mark III. He got this as a hand-me-down from his dad, and he tuned it up so he could go racing. Now, while all the drivers in the UK were getting their dad's old hand-me-down Austins, things were a little bit different in the US. Just look at Formula 1 ace Mario Andretti's first personal car. It's a gorgeous 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air that Mario and his brother inherited from their father. Now, that sure beats bashing around in a tatty old British hatchback, doesn't it? Most of us learn to drive in something with about 60 horsepower, the sort of car your gran would happily drive to the bingo. But when Nico Rosberg passed his test, his dad gave him an early 2000s Audi RS6 Avant. Let that sink in. He was given a 450 horsepower twin-turbo V8 RS6. It's not fair, is it? I had a Mini Metro. That's all that is. I've got an RS6 now though, so that's fine. Now if you want to find out a little bit more about my RS6, I'll put a link to a video just up there. Click on that, you can go watch it. There's also a link below the video if you can't work that link thing up there. Michael Schumacher is an absolute driving legend, and he cut his teeth driving karts. However, there's no record of what he had as his first road car. However, he did once admit that he used to ferry his family around in a Fiat Chroma. I mean, seriously, no one wants a Fiat Chroma. I guess that's what happens when you drive for Ferrari and they don't make family cars, so you end up having to have something from Fiat's back catalogue, like the Chroma. Finally then, we come to the top spot on this list, and it goes, of course, to Kimi Raikkonen. This Finnish Formula 1 star is known for his no-nonsense attitude. People love him because of his funny radio messages during races.
Leave me alone, I know what to do.
But despite his icy cool demeanour, Kimi started his motoring career in the most unglamorous fashion possible. He's from Finland, right? And Finland's next to Russia, and Russia makes larders. Yes, that's right. The Iceman learnt to drive in a Lada Riva. In fact, he loved it so much, he repainted it himself and once described it as perfect. Kimi, I'm going to have to disagree with you on that one, fella. Go and have another vodka or 7 and then have a little lie down and think about what you said. The Lada Riva is not perfect. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like. Now, if you click on that box there, you can sign up to the carwow newsletter where I'll keep you up to date with all the latest car news and reviews in between these video uploads. Sign up, completely free, and you can unsubscribe at any time. Alternatively, just click on those windows there to watch more videos. Thanks for watching.